the hoary host of Hoggoth. If I could pronounce all these strange magical incantations correctly, I deserve a prize. Here we have a wonderful set of Doctor Strange from 1974, 1975. We have the first 5 issues, and then I skipped to number 10, but we'll put those all together as a set for you to give you a good chance to start off a collection. There's the back of number 1. Not perfect copies, probably a very fine plus for most of them. But really nice collectible conditions. This one is the first appearance of Silver Dagger, so you get that going for you as well. Just a quick back step here. Doctor Strange actually had his own title, which was numbered from 169 to 183. And it was done that way because it started out as a Strange Tales comic book, and they just changed it to Doctor Strange and started calling it that. And then they decided, well, let's just start over and number from the beginning, and this continues from that point on. So this is really the continuation of Strange Tales, becomes Doctor Strange. And if you can follow that, you deserve to be a magician. Maybe even the Sorcerer Supreme. This has Steve Englehart stories. Steve does a great job of telling these kinds of off-the-wall stories. And you can't beat that art by Frank Brunner. The ink's by Dick Giordano, who does a lot of the inking at this time. You get the Eye of Agamotto, Clea. You even have a hookah-smoking caterpillar. And check out that dynamic art by Frank Brunner. Like I said, we've got the first 5 issues here. That was number 1. There's number 2, where he has to take on the entire Defenders, sort of. Kind of a version of the Defenders. Back of that one as well. There's the inside of that splash page. So you get kind of a play on the Alice in Wonderland story in this. With Valkyrie as the White Queen in her castle, with Silver Surfer, Hulk, Submariner, Hawkeye, Spider-Man, Black Panther, Nick Fury, Ant-Man, and Green Lantern. So those are unreal versions of these characters. You can find that. There's a good look at that. And if you'll notice, Down in the corner there, in white, it's kind of a ring-wearing hand of what could be construed as Green Lantern, so a little unofficial crossover with DC. The magical tales give you a good chance to do things that you wouldn't normally do. See things. Now in number 3 we get the Dread Dormammu. If you want to correct my pronunciation on any of these, feel free to do so in the comments. But while you're there, like and subscribe as well so you get to see these interesting comics and hear more about them. As usual, they're all available on Craigslist. There's your splash page for that one. This actually reprints the domain of Dread Dormammu from Strange Tales 126 and a duel with Dread Dormammu from Strange Tales 127 by Stanley and Steve Ditko. If you thought that art looked a little different, apparently the team got behind and they had to go back and fill this issue with classic stories from the Stan Lee and Steve Ditko days. There's actually a page and a half of new material anchoring this story. By your normal team, Steve Englehart and Frank Brunner. And yeah, you can kind of see some of the transition. This does have the Marvel value stamp in it from the Living Mummy, and that's intact. I know a lot of kids like to cut those out and send them in or collect them. We're going to issue number 4. And some will value this one quite a bit higher. He battles death in this one, so the prices are all over the board for this. There's your back of that one. And we get a little bit of Frank Brunner starts getting involved in the co-plotting as well with this issue. Bob Wiasek, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, does some of the inking on this, and he's going under the pseudonym Krusty Bunkers for some reason. Anyone knows why? I'd be interested to hear the story behind that. And more of that interior art. And this is where Dr. Strange starts the first path to becoming Sorcerer Supreme. So pretty important series of books here as he becomes what he's destined to be. And there's a little Yoda kind of Obi-Wan Kenobi ghost talk, where he talks to the Ancient One who reveals that he's on the right path to becoming. He also gets an ankh on his forehead. A little more of that. The Marvel value stamp in this one is Sue Richards as the Invisible Girl. Looks to be Jack Kirby art, but hard to tell. There's number 5. It's Also a Silver Dagger story. Named Cloak and Dagger, but has nothing to do with the later to be introduced Cloak and Dagger team. This is Frank Brunner's final work on the interior of the art. Doctor Strange goes into the mind of Clea. In a realm of unreality. Ralph Macchio, who does comics writing later in his career, writes a letter to the editor in this particular one. And the Marvel value stamp is Dormammu himself. Drawn by Steve Ditko. More of the interior art on that one. Then unfortunately I jump over 6 through 9. I'll throw in issue number 10 here. Just so you get a good run of completing a set here and having a full story. This one goes to a cover by Kane, inked by Tom Palmer. And Doctor Strange faces off against Mordo. This is still Steve Englehart. But the inside art is quite the change. Goes to more of a horror style of Gene Colan. Kind of an interesting look between those two authors. If you're a fan of Tomb of Dracula, you'll be familiar with Gene Colan's art, and you can see some of that influence in these pages as well. This also involves the creature Nightmare. And another letter from Ralph Macchio, who is apparently quite the Doctor Strange fan at this point in his life. In the letters column. The back of that. A little less condition, probably a very fine minus on this one. But all in all, a pretty good collection. Look for that on Craigslist and let me know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe if you want to see more.